Well, we're the team for Case Challenge A. So it's myself, Heather, Dylan, Michael, and our teammates Jimena and Sardi. And our focus is on smallholder farmers and the French bean export market to the EU. So today we'll briefly walk you through the country context and our problem analysis, followed by an overview of our proposed work plan and solutions. Then we'll get into our risk and budget analysis, followed by our Q&A session. So our contextual analysis, agriculture and Kenya. As you can see from this graph, the percentage of GDP that comes from agriculture is much higher in Kenya than in other comparison sub-Saharan African countries. And this is really important since 74% of the population works in agriculture, of which 80% of those are actually smallholder farmers. So for those in the room maybe not as familiar with the project, we'll just do it briefly. Our client is Fintrac, and they're operating an agriculture value chain enterprise project in 22 counties in Kenya. And their overall focus is really to increase the productivity and income of smallholder farmers. Now, our case from our client is really focused on agriculture and strengthening the French bean export market for smallholder farmers. And part of this is really a challenge and a problem in Kenya, since recently the EU has made stricter trade standards and regulations for Kenya imports that are coming into the EU. And they have a 10% inspection level on all shipments from Kenya, which poses a problem because they are finding several things of pesticide residues that are not compliant with the EU standards. Another challenge that we identified were the traceability of crops, as well as management practices of several farmers. So why the export market, and why French beans in particular? As you see, smallholder farmers are actually about 50,000 of them that produce French beans, and each of these has about a crop land space of a little less than 2 acres. So they're majorly exporting these French beans to the EU, and as you can see, the French beans really are a high potential crop and high value. The overall production level that's being exported is a smaller amount, it's only 33%, but as you see, the overall value and return that comes from this is much higher. So first we did our problem analysis of this market, and if our problem is how to get smallholder farmers to export French beans to the EU, we found the major problem was certification standards. And we identified 4 sub-problems to this. That's limited access to credit, high cost of initial and renewal certification, as well as use of farming practices that don't meet certification standards. And this is all really important because some exporting companies are starting to buy from medium and large firms and kind of squeezing out the smallholder farmers. So we identified several stakeholders that we find are very important that we should consider. So obviously the national government, and with recent decentralization efforts, we want to make sure that we focus on regional and local governments as well as make sure that we're paying attention at all times to our smallholder farmers and youth and other beneficiaries. So finally, we mapped our value chain from the growers to the exporters to the consumers, and as you can see, we're really making sure that we target smallholder farmers and how to link them to the rest of the value chain.
Okay. So what solution are we proposing? We think we need to focus on formalizing and doing their job of integrating the brokers into this system. They've been pushed out along the smallholder farmers due to expense costs leveraged against the exporters with these new trade regulations. We think they're a great way to bring them back into and empower smallholder farmers. How are we going to do this? We think we can achieve this through a intense 3-day training program held in offices that we hope in the end to provide them with some tools and information to be successful. In the end, we hope these brokers are able to better enforce certification standards, increase smallholder farmers' access to the exporters and the markets themselves, help facilitate information and resources to the farmers regarding such things as access to financing, improving their yields, meeting these international standards, and organizing themselves into alliances. There's some cost benefits this we can talk about a little more later. And improving overall traceability standards throughout this value chain, particularly with a tool called AgriManager, which we'll go into quite a bit of detail about. Now, looking at the broker, how do we see the role of the broker and who they are? Stephen used the term agent of change, and that really resonated with us, and we tend to agree that this is a great opportunity to use this individual. We see them as acting almost as an informal extension agent. They're really a facilitator of information and resources to these smallholder farmers throughout this process. Key characteristics of this individual: they need to be entrepreneurial. This is going to be a money-driven endeavor. They're here to make money. They need to be able to work hard and fast. They need to be engaging because they're going to be working with all actors along this value chain, from the exporters down to the smallholder farmers and everyone in between. They need to be tech savvy because we're hopefully going to implement some interesting, exciting new tools, specifically a web-based app. And ideally, they're going to be young. We know, speaking with Jessica and a lot of people, with the decentralization process going on, the local governments are very focused into youth and youth unemployment. So this is a great way to get some government buy-in and support, we feel. And additionally, the young people, they're not really interested in being involved at the base of this farming practices and agriculture system. They want to be a little more involved at the higher levels, and it's a great opportunity for that, we think. So looking specifically at our training days, in day one, we really want them to take away from this day an understanding of the market, how it functions, and their role in it. So we're going to spend a lot of time on focusing on what are the cash crops, why are they so important, what their value is domestically versus internationally, why this is great. Talk about some consumer expectations, what they expect on the very back end versus like quality and care, and a lot of time too focusing on these export certification standards so we can meet them. What they are, how they vary across countries, especially in the EU, and then what the actual process is to getting them certified, so I have a great understanding of that. In day two, the takeaway for this one is we're going to be focusing on the tool we'll be teaching and hopefully using throughout this, but we're going to spend a little bit of time at the beginning talking about engagement with the farmers and promoting these farmers' alliances. A great cost-saving way for these smallholder farmers to get certified is to work in alliance, to form small alliances and get certified in mass. Additionally, we always think it's great, and I know Stephen mentioned this as well, as an alliance, they have a greater voice in the bargaining process, and they'll be a larger and more important stakeholder throughout the process. They have a bigger voice to contribute. But again, the majority of this day is focused on Agri-Manager. We think it's a really exciting tool, and so we're going to go a lot through the technical training of how this app actually works, its capabilities, how to apply those, and really specifically looking at its benefits to product traceability and payments to farmers. Finally, in day three, we want the big takeaway from this day to really just be more of a stakeholder, or just like a networking event. We want them to meet with major stakeholders and players in the value chain in this day. So we're talking everyone from agricultural input manufacturers to financiers, such as like Equity Bank, we think is a great one, or AGRA, Ministry of Agriculture, of course, so they can understand what extended services are offered to these farmers, have a general idea. And some exporters as well. We mentioned here the Kenya Export Association, but we also know from your work plan in 2014 you've been doing a lot of work with KHE. We think they would be great for them to come in and talk a little bit. Now, a little more detail about the tool Agri-Manager. It's a web-based app, Android-based app, developed by a company called Virtual City, who's actually in Kenya, working in Kenya, built from Kenya. And this application is used a lot in USAID projects, specifically dealing with cut flowers a lot. Been very successful, a lot of positive feedback, and we think it's a great opportunity to use this here. It's wonderful at improving overall accountability and traceability through the entire process. Brokers are able to track and weigh the produce taken in from the smallholder farmers, and it creates a digital scale and receipt. So they know exactly how many pounds or kilograms they've sold to the broker, the exact price, and the broker can bring that receipt back to the farmer, so they have a record of the transaction, and they can pay them via the app immediately. This has cut down payment times as far as 2 months in the early applications, which is great. Additionally, a side benefit, these farmers have been able to take these receipts and as a cleared mode of transaction and apply for financing at banks, which has been really helpful to them. Beyond this, once it's sold to the exporter, it's a great way of tracking the product of what processing has gone through and then to what market. So the consumers in the end, the grocery stores, the grocery companies are able to do a greater job of tracing the product back to its farmer. It's a really exciting application. We think it's got a lot of potential.
All right, so I'm going to show how the brokers will facilitate better access to financing for the farmers and their alliances. The Kenya Ministry of Agriculture had a credit guarantee scheme which partnered with financial institutions to disperse money to farmers. And they found that the two institutions that dispersed the agreed upon amounts were the Equity Bank and AGRA. So we're going to have our brokers link the farmers and their alliances with these two institutions to get easier access to financing. The brokers will facilitate the disbursement of these loans, and this is going to this financial access will allow farmers to invest in agricultural inputs and farm infrastructure, which will also help the farmers achieve their compliance in pesticide use. Next slide. Achieving pesticide residue compliance for the EU, we believe, is going to be a mix of a few different solutions. And the brokers are going to help promote whatever is practical for the farmers that they're working with in their communities. One of these solutions are greenhouse tunnels that were utilized in the Kenyan Horticulture Competitiveness Project. These were effective in reducing pesticide use and water use and make them particularly applicable to the semi-arid counties of the Caves project. The only problem is they entail a high capital cost. However, it's been seen that farmers get a return on their investment within one growing season. Another solution would be organizing farmer field schools and through the farmer alliances to train farmers on integrated pest management techniques such as push-pull intercropping, which is an objective of the Caves project. Another problem that we identified is that contributes to the pesticide use and misuse is that a lot of agri-dealers are offering counterfeit products. So we hope that the broker is going to act as an intermediary with ag input suppliers, with assisting farmers in accessing information about pest outbreaks through data servers such as the AMITSA, an agricultural input market information system that Kenya is already a member of. This will allow for early pest interventions and genuine product procurement that could reduce pesticide use for the farmers. Next slide, we have the work plan. We propose that piloting the broker training programs in 2 counties during year 2, and in year 3 begin to scale up based on an evaluation from the pilot phase results. And some of the potential indicators for successful intervention of the program are listed here, such as the number of brokers trained and the number of farmers' alliances that are meeting certification requirements. Here we have some of the potential risks that we've identified. It's possible that the EU could enact stricter pesticide use regulations in the future, and there may be a high attrition rate with the brokers that have gone through the training. Some of our mitigation strategies are worked into our proposal. We're going to be trying to prepare farmers to sell their products to other markets if they can no longer sell in the EU, such as their domestic market or other members of the Eastern African community. Also through this program, we believe that the brokers will be more formalized and will be earning more income, so they're going to be incentivized financially for them to be engaged in the value chain. Next slide, we identify some of the activities that may present a cost for the Fintrac or the implementing partners or their targeted beneficiaries, such as the training of brokers, getting them the agri-manager tool, or for the farmers purchasing greenhouse tunnels. Thank you.